Since 1911, it's been tradition to race 500 miles at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, an event deep with tradition from the singing of Back Home Again in Indiana. 11 rows of three, the fastest, 33 cars, 200 laps, 500 miles at the 2.5-mile speedway. And at the end, the milk is reserved for the champion. And you'll go into history forever with your face on the Borg Warner Trophy. Distinguished guests, welcome to Grid Network special pre-race coverage for the 109th running of the greatest spectacle in racing. It's the Indianapolis 500. I'm Kobe Lambert from Grid Tonight, and with me, you have Emily Sharp from our Women in Motorsports and IndyCar coverage team, Jess Ball from Joshua Birch Motorsports, Matthew Brogue from GridNetworkTV.com, and Tanner Smith from Pit Box Press. And before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Link in the video description below. If you're interested in becoming a monthly investor on Patreon, also consider YouTube Super Chats and buy me a coffee. Get your name on the leaderboard as well. I also want to thank everyone who sent us the YouTube Super Chats on Wednesday night, Grit Tonight. We really appreciate your support there. And if you're a new viewer right now, follow us at Grit Network TV across all social media and visit our website, gridnetworktv.com, for race recaps and other content, including a full history of the Grid Endurance Performance Index and Grid Ranking. Just the talk in today can be broken down into three parts: the surprise pole winner that nobody saw coming, the hilarious Weenie 500, and unfortunately, the Penske penalties.
Yes, the week started off with quite a lot of drama 1 week ago where we saw the Penskes pulling out of qualifying. There was a lot of qualifying drama. The penalty got awarded to two of the drivers, and firing stole the headlines and have been the main focus of discussion for this week's Indy 500. Drivers, including Pascal Ward, have been open about criticising Team Penske, especially Roger Penske owning the series and the track. And we all got to think back to last year where we saw the push to pass scandal at St. Petersburg, which disqualified Josef Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin from the race results. So Team Penske, it's not been the first time they've been involved in drama. A scandal broke out on pole and bump day 1 week before the 500. Ron Rzuski, Tim Cindric, and Kyle Moyer were originally suspended for the Indy 500, which would have been the second consecutive Indy 500 before both were fired by Team Penske alongside Moyer. Newgarden and Power also made the Fast 12, but because of their penalty, they got moved to the last row of the grid in 32nd and 31st, but it may not be over for them. We know McLaughlin had no issue because he crashed in one of his laps, but Newgarden and Power are now starting 32nd and 32nd respectively. Tanner, we'll start with you. Do we see a Team Penske driver in victory lane later today?
I don't see why not. Obviously, you have Scott McLaughlin. Obviously, he is coming off of his pole win last year, and that crash last Sunday that I'm sure definitely shook him up a little bit. But he's coming into this Sunday with a lot of speed in that yellow submarine, so I would not be surprised to see him up front early and contending. Unfortunately for his two teammates, they'll have to be clawing their way up from the back of the grid. Will Power, obviously a winner of this event. I would not be surprised considering how well I feel like he's adapted to this hybrid unit. I wouldn't be surprised to see him work his way up a little bit quicker than Josef Newgarden, but Josef Newgarden has a chance to make history today by winning a third consecutive Indy 500. And I'd be remiss to say that he doesn't have a chance, especially considering 10 years ago at this very track, Juan Pablo Montoya put on a similar clinic in this race where he climbed from the back of the grid all the way up to the front to win his second Indy 500. So to say that Team Penske doesn't have a chance to win today, even though they have the odds stacked against them, would be, a bit would be a bit robust. So look out for those Penske cars, even if they're coming from the back of the grid and the middle of it.
Yeah, Tanner, and I think heading into this weekend, this is going to sound shocking for our viewers to hear, but I would say Penske had kind of a slow start of the season. I mean, granted, slow for Penske is meaning that each of those three drivers still have a third place so far to their name this season. But that was all about to be changed, I think, at Indianapolis prior to this shocking attenuator penalty. I was telling all of my family and friends and anybody that would listen to me that this was Josef Newgarden's race to lose. And with that being said, The logical side of my brain is saying that he's not going to be able to get it done from 32nd just because historically we've seen winners no lower than the high teens take that win. I mean, we've had a 19th place finisher before take the win, but the hype side of my brain is still telling me he was the fastest on carb day. And to your point, Will Power, he's won this event before. Scotty Mack, he was last year's pole sitter. He led 66 laps last year. So I don't know. I'm with you, Tanner. I think a Penske and Victory Circle is very much still on. But to answer your question, Jess, the logical side of my brain is saying Scotty Mack is the most likely to get it done, but anything is possible at IMS.
And yeah, based on Emily and Tanner's points, I can say I don't think we're going to see one, but it's one of those things. I don't think you can count them out at all. I mean, Penske is an organization right here. 4 wins in the last 7 Indy 500s and 5 of the last 10 with 4 different drivers. I mean, looking at it, one of the best to ever do it. I have my 2311 shirt here. It's wrinkled. Juan Pablo Montoya got it done in 2015, one of the best motorsports drivers of all time. But then you look at it too, Will Power, Simon Pagenaud, and Josef Newgarden have all got it done. So it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't matter if Penske's going to be starting 32nd and 33rd, 2 of their guys, obviously. McLaughlin showed speed too before he was involved in that incident during one of the practices. But it's like, I don't know if we're going to see them necessarily in victory lane. But if we do, it's not going to shock me at all. They're just one of those organizations that has figured it out on this specific course. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that builds more of the excitement, obviously, with everything going on with Penske, all the scandals and stuff like that. It's like building up this hype. So if they can get it done, then the question raises, it's like, well, then why did they get it done? So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, like Emily was saying, when you look at the numbers, where the winner has come from, I went on IMS's website last night before today's show, to look at where everyone come from to start, where everyone comes from to try to win this race, and it really seems like you need to qualify in the front half of the field to have a realistic shot of trying to win this race. But with Power and Newgarden getting sent to the last row, historically speaking, it's going to be nearly impossible for them to win this race. But when you look at Team Penske, specifically Josef Newgarden, never say never with that guy on carb day. I saw a Josef Newgarden who was fired up, and after the push to pass scandal last year, Josef Newgarden used all the momentum and feel from everyone turning against him, so to speak. And he put on quite a clinic there at the speedway on the final lap. And carb day shows up. Josef Newgarden, was the fastest, by quite a bit. And then the number 2 team won the pit stop challenge, showing that despite some of the top leaders at Team Penske, end up getting fired. Despite all of that, that number 2 team still locked in and basically next man up, because Team Penske, they run multiple rows deep. They like even if you have their second and third string guys, they're like, if you sent them to any other team, they would probably be leaders over there. That just shows you how deep Team Penske runs. And while it would be a major surprise in history for Newgarden to win from the last row, with this guy, considering how motivated he is, never say never. But if I had to make a bet on the 3 Penske driver, given he's starting towards the front, Scott McLaughlin's probably the best bet. But Josef Newgarden, going for history, in 2 different ways, furthest back to ever win the 500 potentially, and also becoming the first driver to win 3 in a row. That would be an incredible feat if he's able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, and he could potentially break lots of records tonight if he wins 3 consecutive Indy 500s. There's a lot of main storylines going into this, Newgarden being one of them, despite the fact that he's starting lower down in the grid. Interesting fact, actually, he was one of the 3 drivers in the IndyCar on Fox Super Bowl commercials, and he was the only American featured. So he's been put under a lot of pressure to potentially win the Indy 500. Now, since 1979, the furthest back someone has come to win the Indy 500 was back in 1987 with Bobby Unser, who started in at 20th position. So no one has started lower than that, and Newgarden has got a lot of odds stacked against him. But Emily, starting with you, Newgarden has won back-to-back Indy 500s with some controversy. Considering that fact, how does his 2 wins stack up compared to Helio Castroneves' back-to-back wins in 2001 and 2?
Well, first of all, I just want to say kudos to Kobe and the team for breaking down this controversy so well earlier in the week on Grid Tonight. Encourage all of our viewers
Yeah.
to go check it out. Maybe tomorrow when you're craving some racing content, because obviously we have a full schedule today. But with that being said, I'm by no means an engineer. So everything that I understand from this attenuator gate, if you will, is that obviously Penske was found not to be compliant with the rules. We've been told that this attenuator that was modified was also on Joseph's car last year. And from what we understand, if there is any advantage, it is so minimum that it's not significant enough to be considered advantage. Of course, there's an argument that an advantage is an advantage in racing, even if it's just mere milliseconds. So for me, I do agree with IndyCar's stance that Joseph was firmly declared and maintained as the winner from last year. Listen, just as much as I'm not an engineer, and while he absolutely has more real life experience being around those cars than I am, he also is not an engineer. So he's putting his faith in his team. I don't think there would be any driver on the grid that would be able to tell the difference in their car of an attenuator being modified or not. So to me, his win stands. Of course, he got that job done in that final lap, overtaking Pato Award going into turn 3. And I don't think any racing fan or Pato Award would have wanted a year later to be awarded that win. So for me, I still commend and respect Joseph's win from last year. But if anything, I will say my perception of what it takes to make a Penske perfect run in one of these races, that has changed, if anything. But I still maintain and respect Joseph being the winner from last year's race.
Yeah, it's on my end. I agree with Emily's points there 100%. It's interesting though because it's like she's in the NASCAR world. We have that if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying type of joke. But and then again, you're saying if Penske's so good, why are they still trying to bend the rules to get this advantage? So I thought that was interesting with that. But then again, you can't really discredit Josef Newgarden's not there working on the parts. He's just driving the race car faster than anyone in that event for 2 years in a row. So for him, it's interesting. I don't know if you can put a taint on it because why did it take over 350 plus days to figure out why something had happened to the previous year? So they must have been in that little gray area. But if you compare it to Elio Castroneves' back-to-back wins in the early 2000s, the first one I didn't exist, and the second one I was 10 months old. So what I remember from that day is absolutely nothing. However, when I looked it up, I saw that Elio had a little bit of controversy with the Paul Tracy incident when the caution flag came out. So there's both. How do you compare controversy on the track versus controversy off the track? So obviously neither driver really had anything to do with it. It's all up to the teams or race control, so on and so forth. So I think if you compare them together, I think it's still amazing and impressive to win back to back regardless. And with Josef Newgarden having a chance to go 3 in a row, it's going to be a lot harder than what Elio tried to do back in 2003. It would have been for tried to get his third consecutive, which he didn't do. But yeah, it's just there's controversy, I guess, in both. But if you compare them next to each other, I just think all you can say from the racing perspective, it's amazing. No matter how they got there, they both won back-to-back Indy 500s.
And Emily, the Grid Tonight team really appreciates your compliment there. Got to give a big shout out to Jackson Lambros. I feel like he added a lot to our show that night, trying to give a different perspective of this situation. And we did talk about the engineering piece that Bozy Todorovic put out on motorsport.com, and how he explained that in the grand scheme of things probably did not gain an advantage from all of this. So it's still not good look from an optics perspective. But from a performance perspective, it's nice that it didn't necessarily give the Penske, let's say, 2 or 3 miles per hour or anything like that. But there are a lot of people out there who are going to be saying that Josef Newgarden, his two Indy 500 wins, probably think they're tainted in a way because that green white checkered finish, when he ended up getting around Marcus Ericsson there, it benefited Joseph, and Marcus didn't have a chance to try to go get him back. And then last year when we saw that, when we learned actually just a few days ago that his car from last year it had the same illegally modified attenuator on it. So that was a super unfortunate situation. And Doug Bowles, the president of IndyCar and IMS, came out and said, despite people, calling up the car from last year, he said the results from last year's Indy 500 will stand. So you're not going to see any change there. So Josef Newgarden will forever be the winner of the 2024 in Indianapolis 500. And I'm sure Pato O'Ward would not want to win that way anyways. It'll be really crazy. And it's been said in the chat on Wednesday night, open up a can of worms if we decided to take away an Indy 500 win well over a year later. But at the end of the day, Josef is still a Indy 500 champion, whether you like it or not. And he's going to try to go make history today. I think it'll be really cool if he's able to do that. I think he has had all the fuel to the fire to try to make that happen.
Yeah, people have been kind of breathing fire and brimstone all week about this Team Penske saga, and frankly, it's been kind of nauseating, especially when we found out through Bosey's article that Team Penske received little to no mechanical or aerodynamic advantage through, kind of smoothing out their attenuator. So with that in mind, the 2024 result still stands as one of the more impressive victories I have personally watched at Indianapolis, making that outside move going into turn 3, which Josef had been making all day going into turn 1 and turn 3. Regardless, it was still an extremely impressive move on super old tires. It was, a stupendous showing by a guy who's already won 2 championships in this series. So, not only that, you go back to the year before where he made the pass on Ericsson on what was essentially a green-white checkered. Shout out to our NASCAR fans. But yeah, I think that Newgarden's 2 victories are, I would say, in similar esteem to Elio's because, obviously not only was the second one with the Paul Tracy ending obviously riddled in controversy that still rages on today, you also go back to the first one in 2001 where there were 2 separate rain delays, and in fact, the second of which actually saved Elio from a pit penalty that he had to serve after the first one. So that's not to say that, either of these wins are any less or any more than any other win that's happened in this event, but that's to say that I don't think that these controversies, at least for me, hold back my opinion of either of the races and the winner of them. I just think that with motorsports, every team is trying to find an advantage in their cars, and I kind of explained that in our grid encore this past week when we discussed the penalties themselves. So yeah, I think that Newgarden's 2 wins stack up right there with Elio's. It's just that I think that with recency bias and everything that's kind of come out in the, fallout of these penalties, that we kind of have rose-tinted glasses about the past. And I think that it would behoove us to crack open a history book or 2 and do our reading first. So regardless, Team Penske, they're a great organization. They're going to be very fast today. And again, I wouldn't be surprised to see them make another bit of history here at Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you, Tanner, that Newgarden's 2 wins in a row, it definitely does stack up with Castroneves' wins, because there were a few times where we weren't expecting him to do well, but he had the pace to do so. And you do not want to be leading after lap 191, I have to say. And Newgarden was able to get that strategy right. And I just feel like that Newgarden, despite the fact he's starting near the back, he still has a very good chance. Remember, the last few years, people came from lower down the grid to actually score well and score some decent points. So it's not over for Newgarden as well. And I encourage everyone to get involved in the chat. A Day in the Life is actually watching live from IMS. So massive shout out to you, and hopefully you're having a fantastic time at IMS. Speaking of one controversy, let's move on to some positives, Tanner, with a surprise pole position.
Yes, indeed. So starting in P1 in the front row, we have Robert Schwartzman and Prema Racing. Obviously, we had all that controversy we just covered, but the main story from last Sunday was obviously Schwartzman and Prema Racing. Schwartzman became the first rookie in 42 years to take the pole for the Indianapolis 500, and the last one was Teo Fabi. Schwartzman has never raced on an oval, and leading the field to the green flag will be a brand new experience for the young Israeli. Plus, a new experience for Prema Racing, their best start of the season in their debut, and their first oval race as a team. For reference, Teo Fabi finished 26th in the 1983 Indy 500, where he qualified on pole and only completed 47 laps. One of the most embarrassing performances by an Indy 500 pole sitter was Scott Sharp in 2001. He claimed the pole with Kelly Racing in just his 7th Indy 500 start, and it was the shortest race for him. Lap 1, turn 1, lost control and slammed into the wall without completing a single lap. The last pole sitter to win this race was in 2019 with Simon Pagenaud, so Schwartzman's best finish this year being 18th at Long Beach and the Indy Road Course. Can Robert Schwartzman, in his first ever oval race, have a mistake-free event, and what kind of result would be a good day? Throwing it over to you, Jess.
Honestly, I'm still amazed that Robert Schwartzman managed to get himself onto pole position, because I remember the first few days of practice, Prema's car wasn't even ready to take part in the Indianapolis 500. And we saw towards Thursday and Friday before the main qualifying took place, we were like, oh my goodness, Robert Schwartzman is actually quick. And we seen him do a best finish of 18th, but an oval race, he's shown that he can be quick. But practice, I would say, if he wants to have a good result, I would say top 10, because he's still getting used to oval tracks. He's not used to oval tracks compared to road tracks. And he's got to try a very difficult task to try and defend from Pato O'Ward especially, and Takuma Sato on the first attempt. And I mean, I've known Robert Schwartzman quite a lot from covering the feeder series, and he's always a very quick driver, so I don't think he was expecting it. But I'm sure he's got well-experienced engineers that I bet he's able to calm him through the whole process and take him through step by step on what he needs to do. They're very experienced. And with a team like Prema that is having their first pole position, it's good in itself. But I think he's not going to be that bothered if, say, Pato O'Ward passes him at the first opportunity, because the race is not over in lap 1. He's still got a lot of laps. 500 miles in fact, 499 miles in fact to get it. So, it is still possible for Robert Schwartzman to win, but I would say top 10 really, but you just can't afford to make any mistakes. But you're just taking it as it comes, because starting on pole as a rookie, I think that's just incredible in itself, Kobe.
Yeah, Jess, and I'm actually going to lower the expectations for Robert Schwartzman. I'm actually just going to say that he just needs to try to run all 200 laps, all 500 miles, and see the end of the race. I think regardless of where he finishes, even if he just completes all the laps and get the experience of racing an IndyCar on an oval, I think that would be a win within itself, because this Prema team, considering how much they've struggled so far in the first few races in their debut season in IndyCar, for them to come out and set up pole for the biggest race in the world, that was definitely one of the biggest surprises I've seen in recent memory in motorsports. And, got to give a credit to the Prema team. They really set up this car extremely well for qualifying, but still, race trim, I think it's still not completely there for them, because, you saw Carp Day, even before Carp Day, in race trim, Prema, they were not really good. But for some reason, they hit the setup right in qualifying and shocked the world. So more power to them on that. And then Carp Day come around back in race trim. Robert Schwartzman, towards the bottom of the speed charts, and he's struggling. And yeah, just I remember watching Robert Schwartzman when he was on the road to F1. I think, he probably should have been an F1 driver on talent alone. But, unfortunately, a lot of good drivers, get chewed up and spit out by the F1 ecosystem. They don't get an opportunity to run over there. So I think it's good that Robert Schwartzman is in the IndyCar Series, but given the fact that he's a rookie, he's never run on an oval race, I'm a little concerned for him here at the start, because when you're looking at someone like a Robert Schwartzman who's never run on an oval race, yes, he's already gotten used to the some of the rolling starts on the road and street courses, but he's never done obviously a rolling start on an oval track. And growing up on the F1 ladder system, he was just doing only standing starts and all of that. So Takuma Sato, Pato O'Ward, who's alongside him on the front row, they've been there, done that, and I'm a little concerned, that Schwartzman could potentially get eaten up at the beginning of the race. But But if he doesn't have the pace at the beginning, just drop back and work your way up from there. We've seen that time and time again for certain drivers in the Indy 500. If you don't have the pace early, just let some of the faster cars around you go by. Just run your own race. Come to pits, get an adjustment, and use the tools inside your cockpit to try to make sure you're as comfortable as can be. But Robert Schwartzman, been a rookie and a Prima car that still didn't look the best in race trim. A little concerned about him at the start. So, but I'm sure he'll probably have a better start than Scott Sharp had in 2001.
Yeah, no kidding. I believe we have a comment here from Adam. In 1992, Roberto Guerrero crashed out on the second parade lap. That was embarrassing for him and his team. No doubt, Adam. Yeah, I definitely agree with our two panelists here that Schwartzman will probably just do well to, get a top 10 today and just kind of survive the first few laps, especially as he gets used to all that oval turbulence. So it'll be interesting to see how these first few laps play out. And we'll definitely be looking for the two guys starting behind him here. Looking at Takuma Sato, a two-time winner of the Indy 500 in 2017 and 2020 in the middle. And to his outside, Pato O'Ward, the favorite of the event at plus 500 according to DraftKings, with Alex Palou in second in odds at plus 550. Sato and O'Ward will look to get around the rookie to take the lead early. So obviously, they want to be mindful of getting around him, not causing trouble like a crash to kick off the 109th running of this event. So starting with you, Matt, for Pato O'Ward, how quickly should he want to get around Robert Schwartzman and Sato to lead the Indy 500?
I think it's interesting, right? And I think ultimately it's up to Schwartzman how he wants to set the pace. He could pull an Alexander Rossi, go out and win the race in his first ever Indy 500. It was Rossi's second ever oval start. But for Pato O'Ward, it's like you've done this before. You haven't won, but you've been pretty dang close multiple times. I know people are going to say you want to get out front and set the pace, but I'm going to switch it up. I don't think it matters, to be honest, where Pato O'Ward is at the start. I think he's got to use his racing skill to see where Schwartzman, how he's going to set the field, how Sato's going to set the field. And for Pato, the reason why it's not about where you start, it's where you finish. And that is true testament to the Indy 500, at least this decade, right? And I know I want to touch on the comment too. Of course, it's got to rain, right? We'll get more into that later in the show, though. But for this, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Because if you look, Newgarden only led 26 laps in last year. The year before, he led 5. Ericsson, who won, led 13. Elio Castroneves led 20. Sato led 27 in his win. Notice how that's like barely an eighth of the entire race all these guys won. And then if you go back to Simon Pagenaud, who put on a butt whooping, led 116 laps when he won. Other than that, though, it's like it really does not matter where these guys start. It kind of does, but then when you look at the analytics of it, it's just they got to be near the end. They need to be near the front at the end of the race. So I think for Pato, he's one of the best in the business, especially at this event without a win. He's just ultimately got to judge what the two guys do in front of him, dash next to him, and then work his way there because it's a long, long way to go. 500 miles is no easy feat. And hopefully it will start on time. I know we'll touch on that later, but that's how I feel about that. I think he probably wants to get around him quickly. The racer in him does. But I think for his intelligence, what he's able to do in this car, I think he's going to really just see what the people around him do and then work his way from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Matthew. I think ultimately the only urgent priority for him to lead is going into lap or turn 3 on the final lap, so he doesn't have the same heartbreak from last year. Listen, to your point, Matthew, this is not Monaco. It really does not matter when you take the lead as long as you have it crossing the bricks at the checkered flag. I do want to say I really hope that Robert Schwartzman does not have the same heartbreaking end as my long distant cousin Scott Sharp. To be clear, I'm no relation that I'm aware of, but I think what he did to take that pole was just pure Indy magic that we see here at the month of May at IMS. But as Kobe mentioned, yeah, he's not having the showing the same speed that he did winning that pole. He was 29th on carb day overall. So to all of the dialogue happening, I think it would be really great for him just to finish the race, complete all of the laps, not make any like silly mistakes that he'll look back on and go like, oh, I could have finished higher if I didn't do that. I do think that Takuma Sato, as much as Pato has this fire inside of him to not have the same repeat as he's had in years past with just barely missing out on that win, Takuma Sato has a rocket ship this year. I mean, he is objectively the fastest Rahal Letterman Lanigan car out there, and he has winning experience under his belt. So I do agree with Matthew. I think it's absolutely feasible for Pato to take the lead, but he's going to have to get past Sato, and whether that's done purely on speed or taking advantage of an coming in early or pitting early, a yellow, rain, like things are so unexpected here that it doesn't always come down to strategy, or I'm sorry, it doesn't always come down to speed. Strategy has to be in play as well. But yeah, it's gonna be super fun to see on the first row, maybe potentially a little bit of chaos happening at the beginning.
Yeah, no doubt, especially with potentially some weather in the area in Speedway, Indiana. I know that Joe is trying to pull up the weather radar here quick. But yeah, in the meantime, okay, here we go. So we have a pretty zoomed in weather radar here. So it looks like the tiniest possible cells are just hitting the speedway. This one big one appears to be missing it, so that's good. But yeah, it seems that we just have a little bit of moisture in the area, maybe some more coming that looks to hopefully be maneuvering lower underneath the racetrack. We'll obviously be monitoring that throughout the show. But just to go back to Pato Award, I think that, as Matthew and Emily both pointed out, I don't think it's really important to get the lead early. It's about where you are at the end of the race. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Emily for our next segment.
Yeah, and I love doing a good old hello Palou. So with that being said, let's talk about Alex Palou. Obviously he's our championship leader, but I think objectively all of us going into this weekend don't have him as locked in as we would have had him at other races. Of course, he's starting in row 2, right behind Pato Award. He's starting in 6th place, the second favorite at a plus 550 according to draft picks, with Alex Palou starting in that 6th place. Palou, of course, is going for 3 consecutive wins this season, his 5th win in 6 races, and his first career oval win. So with such a points lead, he could be racing more aggressively for the win, and worst case scenario, still have a healthy points lead over 2nd place. So Jess, I want to bring in for this. Is Alex Palou's best chance at winning the Indianapolis 500 this year in an hour or so? Oh, Jess, I think we have you muted.
Oops, sorry about that. That's the first time I've ever done that in a Grid Network broadcast. So that's the first for everything. I think that Alex Palou feels more confident. He's got a lot of experiences. I'm surprised he hasn't got an oval victory yet, but this could be a very good chance. Palou started near the front row on multiple occasions, but he hasn't picked up the win due to the fact that he got very unlucky in some cases. 2023, he had an incident with BK. But one advantage he has, he's had experience with lots of parts of the race. He had experience with running up at the start of the race at the front, running at the back, having to overtake multiple cars. He still finished very, very well in 2023, despite the fact that he was at the back for all of it. And he even said that he feels more ready because he has an experience, and he feels like he's got a good race car for the Indy 500. He's not too bothered about starting where he is, and I'm still quite shocked he hasn't got an Indy 500 win. Yes, the IndyCar Championship is important, but with the spectacle of Indy 500, it's just everyone wants to win it. And with the amount of points on offer for an Indy 500 win, if you win that, you have a very good chance, if you're near the championship lead, to really pretty much have a hold in the championship. So, he has a very good shot today, I think. And he's had a lot of experience fighting with lots of other drivers. I could see he climb his way up through the field. I could see him fighting against Pato O'Ward because they both fight for such a long time. But yeah, I think Palou I think Palou's going to have a very good shot today.
Yeah, I concur with that, Jess. I think that Alex Palou should look at every new year where he hasn't won as his next best opportunity. So not only that, he definitely has the speed in his number 10 Chip Ganassi Racing Honda to get to the front and stay there. Obviously, he's found every way possible to find his way into the back of the field or find his way into trouble in this race. And somehow he comes back with just an incredible run and gets back into the top 10. It's genuinely insane. I think that if we're talking about momentum, I think obviously Alex Palou has the most momentum of anybody coming into this weekend. Obviously has won 4 of the first 5 events this season. And granted, they've all been at road courses or street courses, so it's not like he has won on an oval, which he still has yet to do in his career. But with that said, it's not for a lack of trying and a lack of effort. The man has come second here, I believe, to Elio Castroneves back here in 2021, where he kind of got outclassed by the Master. But you have to kind of take your lumps and lose to the Masters a couple times here more often than not to basically have the Speedway choose you. You can ask Josef Newgarden that. But at the end of the day, I think that it would be foolish for us not to think that the DHL Honda, which has been so strong all year long, will not be strong here at Indianapolis today. So if you see Alex Palou on the podium, maybe even on the top step, don't be surprised to see DHL deliver today.
Yeah, and to your point, Tanner, I mean, this has been all leading up to, the momentum is on his side, to the point that Alex's start of this season is being compared to the great AJ Foyt's dominant season 60 years ago. He's won 3 IndyCar championships before the age of 30. Out of the 16 tracks that make up the 17 race season, he's won 9 of them. Now, like we've all been saying, none of the 5 ovals in Long Beach or Toronto has he taken his DHL to victory circle. So, Kobe, let's head over to you. Does Palou need an Indy 500 victory to be regarded as one of the best of all time, like Scott Dixon, like Dario Franchitti, like Mario Andretti, and of course, the great AJ Foyt?
I think if most drivers, would answer a question like this, they'd be like, "No, my career is incomplete without an Indy 500 win." The same thing, in NASCAR. You could have a driver, let's say, win 7 championships, but if you don't have a Daytona 500, that's something, that'll eat at them forever. Or in sports cars, you could win every sports car race it is, but if you haven't, won the 24 hours of Le Mans, that's one that'll keep you up at night for the rest of your life. So I think that it would probably be in Alex Palou's best interest to get an Indy 500 win. But in regards to being the best ever, even if he never wins an Indy 500, continue to stack championships, I still think he could certainly put his name on the Mount Rushmore of IndyCar drivers at the end of the day, since it looks like he's on that trajectory to be one of the all-time greats in IndyCar, because the run that he's on right now is absolutely incredible. And I do think that an Indy 500 victory will happen at some point. It very well could be today, or it could be a year from now, 2 years from now, or a few years from now. I think it could come anytime for Alex Palou, but I do think that he has a good chance of winning today, since he has been the man to beat this year. And an Indy 500 win, it will go a long way. I'm sure if you ask Alex Palou right now, he'd probably say he would trade all 3 of his IndyCar championships for an Indy 500 victory. Most drivers would probably say that.
It's tough to say, right? Because like Kobe mentioned NASCAR for an example, like Denny Hamlin has 3 Daytona 500s, which is some of the most, not the most all time, obviously, but not a lot of people get that far and win that many of the most important races. But he doesn't have a championship, but he's widely known as one of the best to never win a championship, but he has that very important race. Palou has 3 championships, but he doesn't have this arguably most important race, the Indy 500. So I don't think he needs one. I don't really know how IndyCar values their all-time greats in terms of if they win one specific race, kind of like how NASCAR does it in a sense. But Palou, if he inevitably wins his 4th this year, he's only 28 right now. It's like, if he stays with IndyCar, he is going to be on that list with those 4 drivers, regardless of if you like him or not. So I think he can get one. Does he need one? He'll say he does. He'll probably trade a couple. When he inevitably wins 5 or 6 championships in his career, maybe even 7, he'll say, oh, I would trade one if I could get that Indy 500 win, like Kobe was mentioning. So it just depends on how you look at it. Does he need one? I don't think he does. Some people might say in order to be one of the best, he needs to win this specific race. So we'll see what happens. I think he can get it done, though. I mean, it's Alex Palou. I mean, I mentioned a post. We talk about Kyle Larson. We talk about Max Verstappen being some of the greatest in the world. We don't talk about Alex Palou as much as we should, because if he's not top 3, he might not be top 2, but he might be top 1 in that scenario. So we'll see what happens. But for me, too, I don't know. I want to hear Emily's thoughts on that, though.
I mean, for me, I do think it's not if, it's when for Alex Palou, for him winning this 500. There's nothing guaranteed in life. I think death, taxes, and Max Verstappen, dominating in an F1 car, and Scott Dixon always finding his way through the field. But I do think that at some point we're going to see an Alex Palou in victory circle at Indianapolis. I don't know if it's this year. I think he's made great strides each season. He, as we've talked about, he doesn't have that win on the oval, but who knows? I mean, the Indy Magic is alive. Robert Schwartzman pulled the biggest pole on the biggest stage to take that on his first oval ever. So, who knows what's in the stars for Palou. But I feel like we're just in store for something completely unpredictable that none of us saw coming today. And I think Palou is kind of like the thought that everyone kind of has going in to be a lock for today. And I can't say it with my full chest. So again, I think it's when, not if, for Alex Palou. But Matthew, you started talking about Kyle Larson. I'd love to pass it over to you and kind of continue the conversation around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people from other disciplines of motorsports too, like NASCAR, are tuning in specifically in the next couple minutes to see this one driver. But I want to talk about, there's 2 drivers that are going to be remembered as all-time greats in motorsport. However, they're both in different disciplines. You have Kyle Larson and you have Helio Castroneves. I'm going to start here with Kyle Larson. He's making his 2nd attempt to do the double in the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day, which is one of the most impressive things, I think, in all of motorsport. Last year, rain ruined his day for both, technically, when you think about it, right? Because he never got to start the Coca-Cola 600. Thankfully, he had Justin Allgaier in his place there. And then the Indy 500 had a 4-hour rain delay as well. And we see there's a possibility of sprinkles and rain there currently. I don't know why Mother Nature wants to do this to us. I just want to see the double be run to its completion. But we'll see what happens. So Kyle Larson is starting 19th in the field this year with Arrow McLaren, with sponsorship from his usual HendrickCars.com, and Amazon Prime Video is actually on the car as well, which, if you note, that is where the NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 will be on today, Amazon Prime Video. The winner has come from 19th twice, Bill Vukovich in 1954 and Ryan Hunter-Reay in 2014. Only 2 in this long history, so we'll see what happens. But I'm going to start with you, Tanner, here. I got a couple kind of questions. One, it's like, what do you think are Larson's goals here today? Is winning his only goal, or do you think completing all 1,100 miles and becoming only the 2nd driver or person, technically, to achieve this since Tony Stewart? What do you guys think? I want to start with you, Tanner.
I think his first goal of the day should be to stay hydrated. I think that after Tony Stewart collapsed twice trying to do this. I think that it would behoove him to, at bare minimum, just drink a lot of water. I know it might cause other problems in the race car to drink a lot of water, but believe me, it's better to do that than to be hooked up to an IV after the Coke 600 tonight. But as far as Kyle Larson winning this race and the race afterwards, I do think that at this point in Kyle Larson's career and his mythos, that if he's entering a race, he thinks he can win it. And I think that carrying that confidence into the Indy 500 will only behoove him, especially after he managed to have the Speedway choose him in NASCAR's race here last summer. So I think that first and foremost, his goal today should be to win. But if he can't do that, I think that it would be great for him to finish all 200 laps, just like he did last year, all 500 miles, and hopefully do this one mistake-free. Last year, he suffered that brutal speeding penalty that, kind of took him out of contention while he was running in the upper top 10. So I think that if he can just have a mistake-free day and, make his way to Charlotte on time relatively, he's definitely got a really good shot to win the second leg of the double for sure. But I think that in Indianapolis, it'll be tough sledding for sure coming from the 7th row. But at the same time, he is a very talented driver, obviously one of the best in the world, 4th in our grid ranking, which we'll talk about later. But I definitely think that today he should focus on, moving his way through the field, kind of getting used to this hybrid system in traffic and, seeing what he can do with his Indy car and stay hydrated.
Yeah, I think when you look at what happened last year, if it wasn't for that pit road speeding penalty that you mentioned, Tanner, Kyle Larson probably, would have gotten a top 10 finish or even at best a top 5. I think that the ceiling for him this year, be a top 10 finish would be really good for Kyle Larson. But at the end of the day, the goal is to become the second person ever to complete the double. So as long as he completes all 200 laps and 500 miles, I think that would be a success. And then go to Charlotte for 400 laps and 600 miles tonight. If he does that, that'll be an extremely successful day for Kyle Larson. But as we look right now, with the continuing to sprinkle at IMS, the double is in doubt once again. And, as they've been said since it was announced Larson was coming back for the second year, NASCAR is going to be the priority this year. And what's happening right now, weather-wise in Indy, is definitely not what Kyle Larson wants to see. It's almost like Mother Nature doesn't want us to see the double. And if Kyle Larson, doesn't, get a new contract with McLaren to come back to do the Indy 500 next year, watch, it's going to be sunshine and not a cloud in the sky next year when Larson doesn't come back. And then if he comes back, it's just going to rain again. It just seems like Mother Nature just doesn't want this to happen for some reason. And as it continues to sprinkle, Nathan Brown from the Indy Star reports, he says from what he understands the situation as of right now, that he says he understands that Kyle Larson has to be at driver intros at 5:25, but that's not what Bob Pockers from Fox Sports reported last night. Bob says that NASCAR has actually excused Kyle Larson from being required to attend the driver intros and the drivers meet, and so maybe that would buy Kyle a little bit of time there, but who really knows? And then Nathan Brown also says that the plan would probably be to have Larson start the race, do as much as he can before, just has to retire the car from the race and head to Charlotte. That would be a real unfortunate situation. Hopefully it doesn't come to that where we get a late start where Kyle Larson just runs, a handful of laps and then he has to, retire from the race in a car in good condition. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that if we do get a delay, that is just only minor so he can compete the race and get to Charlotte with plenty of time to spare. So I guess there's still some different information floating around about whether he has to be at driver intros and the driver's meeting or not. I know Bob said something different last night, but Nathan from Indy Star said something different.
Yeah, I think there's before we touch on Castroneves, I want to touch on a couple of points you guys made too. One is this is the last year of that contract with McLaren for Kyle Larson, so we won't know what's going to happen. And I think most race fans, just motorsports fans, not specifically towards one discipline or the other, want to see this happen. And I know Kobe also touched on the whole drivers meeting thing. Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch didn't get they had to start in the rear, I believe. They didn't get excused. So I think that's an interesting point to know. I think NASCAR is really pushing. They want to see Kyle Larson be able to do this. And for those who don't know a lot about NASCAR, and a lot about Kyle Larson. He lost the regular season championship. See, NASCAR has playoffs, unlike most other motorsport. But he lost the regular season championship by 1 point last year, and he would have gotten that 1 point and tied it and won the tiebreaker if he started the Coke 600, which he did not. Justin Allgaier had to take it. So clearly NASCAR is Larson's priority here, and the rain clearly does not want to see it happen, or Mother Nature, I should say. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it stops, or hopefully, Kobe, if you can go outside, do a rain dance in your area to bring the rain there, we'd really appreciate that, so Larson could actually do both races. But so touching on Larson there, but I want to go into a little bit of Castroneves here as well. He's one driver who's going for a win in history, but in kind of a different way. He's starting behind Kyle Larson in 22nd, and he's trying to become the first 5-time winner of this event. I also want to point out, I don't know if or how often we've had somebody start the Daytona 500 and start the Indy 500 in the same year that wasn't a NASCAR driver. Because remember, Elio did do that this year, which in the number 91 Project 91 car for Trackhouse Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, sponsored by Wendy's, by the way, just to let you know. But again, speaking back to Castroneves, this time again it's with Meyer-Shank Racing, but he is starting way back in row number 8. Twice the winner has come from 22nd. I don't know if you guys remember it. You guys might have been alive for this, 1927 and 1935. Those are the times it happened. So I don't know if you guys can recall
His second
that.
life.
yeah, maybe in the previous one. So I'm going to start with you, Emily, on this one. Do you think Elio Castroneves can make it 5 in 2025?
I was trying to think of a witty remark to counter the 1927, but yeah, I was there. I remember it well. Listen, you can never count out Elio Castroneves at Indianapolis, right? All I'm gonna say is that he was the second fastest car on track back on Monday's practice of this week, and he was in the top 10 on carb day. And that's after he was kind of middle of the pack after the first 7 practice sessions. So he's making improvements on his car. Facts are facts, though. As you said, Matthew, he's starting in the 8th row, and I am, again, my hype side of my brain is saying that if anybody is going to find their way to the front all the way that far back, it's going to be Josef Newgarden, but never count out Elio Castroneves. But I'm ready for like something unpredictable and unbelievable to happen today. So I don't know, maybe it's this rain that's showing up again and trying to like throw a wrench in Kyle Larson's plans, and all of us fans are wanting him to do a successful double today. But who knows? Maybe a 5th celebration is in the stars for Ellie, and he gets to have another milk shower, and that's the only type of shower we have today at IMS. But what are you thinking and feeling, Jess?
I think that's the beauty of the Indy 500. Anything can happen. If it was any other race like Monaco, then the answer would be no, where he was starting. But since it's the Indianapolis 500, there could be chaos. There could be a lot of slipstream involved with Elio Castroneves. I would say that it's not impossible for Castroneves to make it 5 in 2025. And if he does, it will be well deserved. His last win in Indianapolis was back in 2021. Looking at his last results, it's not been the best, but he's been there when it counts, still scores some decent points whenever it is. So it would be good to make history, but I could sort of agree with Emily that if it was someone coming back through the field, it will probably be one of the Penskes, to be honest. They do have a quick car at the end of the day as well. And Castroneves is a well-known driver for being one of the most successful in Indy history. And if he can survive this and win in 2025, 5 from 2025 has a nice ring to it, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Before I send it over for our next segment, I think those shirts would go hard, right? 5 in 2025. So if anyone from that...
Where's my order?
Yeah.
Anyone from Meyer-Shank, if you're watching this right now, please give us some sort of credit for that. But in all seriousness...
Take me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, say
Right, make
Jess.
sure in the little trademark put Jess Ball right there. Right.
Yeah.
But for Elio, I mean, it's one of those things he can make it 5, but I think it's one of those things too. It would be like if Jimmy Johnson were to somehow win the Coke 600 today, 2 of the best in that specific event. But it's like one of those things, one of the best to do it that actually wins the event. But it would be shocking because obviously I'm not going to say past their prime, so I'm going to quiet down because Jimmy's still one of the best all time. Elio's one of the best all time in motorsport too. I think he could make it 5, but I think it's rather unlikely. But I think one of my favorite battles in general is the manufacturer battle and all the teams going. So Honda and Chevy, I want to throw it over to Kobe for this one.
Thank you, Matthew. And one team that's been rather quiet all week is Andretti Global. Marcus Ericsson is 9th, and the highest starting Andretti driver, Kyle Kirkwood, starts 23rd, and Colton Herta 27th. Don't forget about Marco Andretti, who was in that dreaded last row shootout. He starts 29th. Also, Meyer Shank Racing as we've been talking about, had a tough month with Marcus Armstrong in the last row shootout after crashing on the morning of qualifying. And as we mentioned, Castroneves starts 22nd. But Felix Rosenqvist will fifth fastest. Looking at Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, Takuma Sato looks quick, starting second despite the issue on Carb Day. Devlin DeFrancesco starts 16th, then Louis Foster in 20th, and Graham Murray Hall in 28th. Emily, do you anticipate that Felix Rosenqvist will finish ahead of all the Andretti RLO drivers and his teammates?
Well, first of all, I want to take a page out of Matt's book and Ben, who we hope is enjoying his time off, and do a little show and tell. I wasn't around for 1927. But I was around when the season finale used to happen at Auto Club Speedway, and I got Marco Andretti's signature. So I'm very biased. I would love to see Marco Andretti do well today. But with that being said, I don't know what with Felix Rosenqvist, I feel like he's more of a qualifier because he just hasn't been able to consistently put it together when he's had a strong qualifying start to his race. So for me, in the Andretti, battle against Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, and Meyer Shank, I'm thinking, don't sleep on Marcus Ericsson. He obviously is a winner here. He's finished in the top 2 out of the 3 races that he's had here at Indianapolis. Obviously, last year he got taken out on that first lap incident, but he's had pretty good race pace so far in practice. So uh, keep an eye on Marcus Ericsson.
I'm gonna actually go a different direction. I think that I think that Andretti is not gonna have a great day. I just don't feel like their drivers really have the strength in their cars to make it through the field and get up to the front, especially Herta after that tremendous crash that he suffered. Not only that, I just don't really see it. I don't know why. I can't really explain it. I just don't really see it. As for Rosenqvist's ability to beat the RLL cars, obviously he's got a couple of them covered already, but the one that he's really going to have to contend with is Takuma Sato, and I do not think that he's going to be able to outrun him. I just think that Sato obviously brings all that experience that he's had from his many failures and many triumphs in this event that he'll be able to carry forward into this race and know when to make the right moves. Rosenqvist himself, I kind of lean towards what Emily said, that he is a bit of a hot lapper. He, obviously can set a quick lap in qualifying, but it's a whole different story when he gets into turbulent air and has to pass people. That's not to say that, Rosenqvist is like less of a driver or anything like that. It's just that he has shown on a number of occasions that when he is kind of faced with any sort of turbulent air, any sort of a challenge to his ability to move forward in the pack, especially here, he tends to wilt rather than flourish. So I think that with everything that Meyer Shank is giving him, especially Elio Castroneves having, a big role in that team and, kind of bringing all of his drivers along, I do think that he will have a strong car today and will likely net a good finish. It's just a matter of, keeping yourself in the game and not kicking yourself out of it. And I think that Felix has a very fast car and has shown that he has speed around Indy. Obviously, had a very solid showing going before he got in that terrible accident with Kyle Kirkwood a few years back. But overall, I'd say that Rosenqvist has a very solid shot at beating the RLL cars outside of Sato and probably all the Andrettis.
And now looking on the Chevrolet side of things, some drivers you anticipated the front include Pato O'Ward, Scott McLaughlin, Connor Daly's always good here, and Alexander Rossi. Some of the surprises have to include David Maluka starting seventh, and as we talked about on previous shows leading up to this event, it's definitely been a quiet year for AJ Foyt racing, a team that's seemingly taken a step back. And one thing that's not a surprise, Christian Lundgaard's been strong all year in his first year with Arrow McLaren. He's starting eighth. Now, of course, we already talked about him, the rookie, Robert Schwartzman, on the pole for Prima. Jess, out of all of the Chevrolet drivers, and excluding Pato O'Ward and Scott McLaughlin, who is likely to be the next top contender?
Well, this is a tough one because Robert Schwartzman, yeah, he's starting on pole position. I don't think he has a good shot of winning today because he'll probably need quite a bit of a miracle. But I have to say the McLarens have been looking really, really strong this season. And with obviously Christian Lundgaard doing very well in the championship in general in IndyCar and him managing to get in to the Fast 12, I think I could see him having a very good chance. I think in the McLarens in general, I think he'll work together and maybe Lundgaard can get his first overall win. I think there was one of his first years in the Indy 500. He was in the last row shootout and then he's made it through to the Fast 12 this year with a great car. Same with Seagull as well. I mean, he was in he didn't even make it through Indy 500 last year, and he managed to go through this year, which I have to say I'm so happy for him that he's bounced back. And I hope we see the same with Christian Abel next year, please, that he makes it through and actually gets a decent car to drive the Indy 500 next year, please. That'd be lovely. But yeah, I think out of all the cars, I could definitely see probably one of the McLarens doing well in having a good shot of challenging for some good road. But don't count out David Malukas either.
Yeah, I want to touch on one specific driver, but before, I know Emily mentioned Andretti. I actually got off a flight a couple years ago coming from, I think it was a North Carolina area. I drove as fast as I could legally to our random tire shop. And Mr. Mario Andretti was signing autographs, and I was the last person in line. So I'm not going to throw this like I did my Juan Pablo shirt. I'm going to set this nicely next to me. He's probably the most famous person I have an autograph of. But I do want to touch on one of the drivers that used to race for Andretti Autosport, who he did kind of win a race here. I think we are not giving enough credit to Alexander Rossi and how good he's been in this event. And I think he will be the top Chevrolet. I want to give credit to Connor Daly. Always leads a lot of laps, just hasn't gotten it done. But Alexander Rossi, and you just look at it, right? He won his first ever Indy 500. He started 11th in that race for when it was Andretti Herta Autosport. And he's starting 12th, so only one spot off this year. But you look, he's got 3 top 5 finishes in a row. He has, I believe, 7 of his 9 Indy 500s. He's finished in the top 7. That's pretty great, and it's his first one with Ed Carpenter Racing. So I think if you remove Pato and Scott McLaughlin out of the Chevrolet camp, who's going to be the next top finisher? And I'm surprised DraftKings doesn't have one of those bets like they always do for F1. Who's going to be the best finisher if it's not for the top 5 teams? So that'd be an interesting thing, and maybe they could set that up in the next 20 minutes nonetheless. But I'm going to go for Chevrolet. I really think Alexander Rossi can put on a show. Even if he's not showing as much pace as he usually does here, I think he could be the next top Chevrolet finisher if it's not one of those 2 guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. Alexander Rossi is always a good choice. I remember that year he had the issue on pit road, and then he was like really frustrated, and then he was making some of the most craziest moves. He was going around there making passes in the corners around the outside. He was just slicing and dicing through traffic. That was seeing angry Alexander Rossi that was a lot of fun. And yeah, Matthew, it doesn't feel like he has the pace this year as he had in recent years, but who knows with the cooler track conditions, maybe it'll make it a little bit easier for these drivers to go out there and pass, and we'll see Alexander Rossi move up through the field. And since we're getting a lot closer to the start of the race, one last question, and this one is going to be for all of you guys. Of course, the Grid Network is home to the Grid Ranking, which started in 2017. This is the first time that a current Grid Ranking leader is in the Indianapolis 500. Only for the second time are two drivers in the top 10 of the Grid Ranking in different disciplines racing against each other. The last time that happened was Sebastian Ogier in World Rally Championship and Shane Van Gisbergen from Supercars at the time in Rally New Zealand. Both finished in the top 10. This time in the biggest race of the year, Alex Palou, the Grid Ranking leader, and Kyle Larson, fourth in the Grid Ranking. Go for the double. Tanner, starting with you, do you think both drivers are going to finish in the top 10, and who's going to get the better finish today, Palou or Larson?
I think that they both can finish in the top 10. I don't think they both will, and I will not say, for legal reasons, which one I think won't. So outside of that, I think who finishes ahead, well, I guess that kind of gives away my answer. Darn. It'll probably be Palou. He just has more experience in these cars, specifically with this hybrid unit, so he's going to be the one I lean towards more often than not in this regard. But don't count out Larson. Like I said, he is a former winner at this track, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him rise from the 19th spot to contend for a top 10 late in the race.
I have to agree with Tanner on this one. I think Larson, with the way he starts, I don't think he's going to climb that many positions. And as I was saying earlier, Palou has just got so much experience. No matter what, he has experience climbing up through the field. He has experience from the front, and he has experience in the middle as well and at the back. So I think out of the two drivers, I think Palou is going to finish ahead.
For me, I'd probably say Palou too. I just hope wherever Larson's finishes, he can quickly get out of that car and get on the helicopter and get the heck out of there into Concord, Charlotte area. I actually looked at this question more or less, who do you think is going to finish in the top 10 in the grid ranking, more or less in the position. So I'll give you both. I think Palou will finish here ahead of Larson. I hope they're close. Like, I hope it's maybe 8th, 9th, 5th, 6th, so on and so forth. But Larson, in terms of the grid ranking, Palou, I think, is going to take off. I really think there's a lot of inconsistencies, which I think Palou, if he keeps it up, will be the 2025 grid ranking champion. However, Larson is the only NASCAR driver to be in the grid ranking every single year since 2021. And in fact, he's the closest to win since I believe Harvick in 2020 was third, and I think Larson was third as well in 2021. So Larson, if he stays consistent, can put that fight to Palou on the grid ranking side of things. But in terms of on the track, maybe the same thing. He could give him the fight. So that's my long answer. My apologies.
I'll keep it short, Matthew, because I can't follow that up because that was really well said. But I'm going to say Palou. I think last year, I don't know. I feel like the magic of was kind of back in Kyle Larson. He's had a couple of crashes this year so far in practice. So I don't know. I want him to do well and finish top 10. But my gut's telling me Palou is going to be the higher finisher today.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Alex Palou, given his experience, he's probably gonna end up finish in the top 10. And if Larson's able to complete, all the laps, I think it's possible we could see both of them finish in the top 10. But I have to think it would certainly be Alex Palou finishing in the top 10 and finishing ahead of Larson, especially given the uncertainty of Larson's schedule. If we get a delayed start here, it could potentially mean that Kyle Larson has to leave, for Charlotte Motor Speedway without even getting to run, or as Nathan Brown alluded to from the Indy Star, that Larson may, get to start the race, run as many laps as he can, but once he hits a certain time in the race, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to park it and call it a day, which would, as I said, would be really unfortunate here. And before we move on, going to give a quick weather update from AccuWeather. The system is passing just south of the track, and it is also cloudy at the track. If you're watching the Fox pre-race show, completely cloudy, so low chances of rain don't show on the. Well, actually, there is rain on the radar. There's a concern about a system coming in just about 5 minutes from now, and that could be an issue. But hopefully, it's not like last year where we get a washout for several hours, and then we get a late evening start on Sunday for the Indy 500. It doesn't. Looking at the weather coming into the day, it didn't look as bad as it did last year. So I'm very optimistic that we are going to get a full show in today. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. Just for the sake of Kyle Larson, I would love to see this, get started sooner rather than later, because it would really suck, to have hype for the double for the second consecutive year, and then it just ends up all for naught. And all the information is on the screen is courtesy of AccuWeather, and of course, subject to change. And since we're getting close to the official starting time for the Indianapolis 500, it's time for everyone's favorite game, pick a winner.
Absolutely. And lately it has not been my favorite game, but it is time for pick a winner. Nobody guessed MotoGP or the Grand Prix correctly, the Sprint or Grand Prix, which is rare because usually it's a Marquez brother, and it wasn't, funny enough. At least the Grand Prix wasn't. So Matt White, Kobe, Tanner, Adam, Isha, Emily, Jackson, and Mara all guessed Lando Norris. Notice who didn't? Me. I didn't guess Lando Norris because I thought Charles was going to do something, and now my lead is diminishing to Kobe, right?
I thought it was Verstappen. Going to be Verstappen, so I lost a point as well.
Gosh, we're not a great start to this weekend for us. But now it's time to pick the winner of one of the most important races in all of motorsports, one of the most fun, the Indianapolis 500. And just the people watching this on whether it's Facebook, YouTube, you name it, please comment and let us know who you will win. Go to X as well, Blue Sky, you name it. Like I said, try to get on this leaderboard. There's over 130 races left this year, so there are still plenty of time to score some points and catch us up at the front. Hopefully I don't blow it like that. But I'm going to start with you, Emily. Who is your Indianapolis 500 winner?
Well, I'm seeing some Josef Newgardens in the chat, Pados, Tikumisados, but I like I said, there's something in my gut today that we're going to see something just unbelievable. And I've been agonizing over it. I've been going back and forth, but I'm going to lock in Santino Ferrucci. This guy has finished in the top 10 every outing that he's had at Indianapolis. I know. This
What?
is crazy.
What a choice.
I'm going with this crazy guy, Ferrucci. I don't know. Like, I feel like we're in store. Like, it's already been an unbelievable start of the month of May with the Penske penalty. So I'm going to go big. I'm going to go bold. I'm also going to give Kiska a chance to maintain her lead over me in the grid ranking. But lock me in for Santino Ferrucci. This guy gets crazy around this track, and I'd love to see it for AJ Foyt.
Wow, that was quite the selection, Emily. I don't know how I'm going to be able to follow that up, but
I'm going to see myself out.
anyhow, I am actually going to go with the pick that I made in the preseason and earlier this month. I am not somebody that just moves from what they select. I am going with Pato O'Ward. He has been so strong here in many previous attempts. Obviously has 2 runner-up finishes. I think the third time will not be the charm, and he'll finally just get the win rather than finishing second again. So look out for our great friend from Mexico to go out and win his first and probably first of multiple Indy 500s.
I was hoping that Tanner would pick someone else because I was going to go on to a whole thing on why I think the same thing. But yeah, I think Pato O'Ward is going to win the Indy 500 as well. Again, for the same reasons as Tanner, he's become so close before. He just missed out last year. He needs to not lead on the final lap, and then he'll win the race. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with my pick a winner and go Pato O'Ward. I think he's going to do it. Third time lucky, hopefully.
And I'm gonna join you too on the Pato O'Ward trend. I think given the heartbreak from last year and also running strong in this race and other editions of the Indy 500, I think that the stars are gonna align for him today. Especially if you're just watching the driver intros, he got the loudest cheers of all the drivers. You know, Pato's fan base. You know, it runs deep regardless of where you are. You could be at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You could be out. You could be out in the track in the middle of nowhere, and Pato's fan base is going to show up. And I think that today is just going to be the day for Pato O'Ward. And before you go on to you, Matthew, going to provide one more update on Kyle Larson. Nathan Brown from Indy Star just spoke to McLaren team principal Tony Kanaan on the grid, and Kanaan told Nathan Brown that that the race has to start by 3 p.m. Eastern time. If the race does not start by 3 p.m. Eastern time, Kyle Larson will not race in the Indianapolis 500. So that's the times, and thankfully we still have a lot more time on our hands. So I guess maybe if it gets delayed to maybe 2:30, he'll be good to try to complete the race. But Kyle Larson needs to start this race by 3 p.m. Eastern time to be able to run the Indy 500.
Plenty of time.
It better start before 2:59. You know, I'll be very upset.
Yeah.
But I hope for the sake of pick a winner, Emily's pick will be on flaming hot takes on social media because that's fun. However, I can't really say I disagree with anyone else. I don't really disagree with Emily's pick either, but Paddle Who
Thank you.
is kind of the way I was going to. I just think from a marketing standpoint as well, nothing would be more awesome for IndyCar to see Paddle in the victory circle drinking whatever milk he picked. So we'll see. And then Adam, Josef Newgarden, I don't know if people are more shocked at Newgarden being picked or Ferrucci being picked in that case, depending on starting position. And then Amber going with Pato O'Ward as well, and her husband saying Takuma Soda. See, that's I think well. And I think Christian Lundgaard, Alexander Rossi. I think there's a lot that can happen here today. But in order to that, I went with Pato. I want to send it over to another Pato picker over here in Tanner to close us out.
Yes, 4 out of 5 here at Grid for Pato Award. Today's Indianapolis 500 is on Fox today here in the United States. In the United Kingdom, you can watch it on Sky Sports F1. For worldwide coverage elsewhere, visit IndyCar.com for international viewing options. Also, check out JB Motorsports, as our Joshua Birch and his team will be doing his watch along. He has done MotoGP, Formula One, the Indy 500, and he is also going to do the Coca-Cola 600 after that. He's doing the quadruple today, so definitely tune into his channel. Be sure to subscribe to Grid Network and hit the thumbs up button and the bell icon to avoid missing any of our programming. Today, between the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600, the Grid Live pre-race for NASCAR will kick off. I will be part of that dais. And on Monday, Grid Live wrap-up at noon Eastern, where we'll be covering the Monaco GP, the Indianapolis 500, and the Coca-Cola 600, as well as MotoGP. Grid Encore Monday evening after that is a great way to wrap up Motor Monday with Ben and Brandon. Then we'll have Grid Tonight on Wednesday with Kobe and the latest Grid Endurance Performance Index, and we'll do it all over again next weekend. So, for Emily, Jess, Kobe, and Matt, I'm Tanner Smith. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the races.